Side to the left, you need to know the two purposes of the backup board, which are to protect the machine and prevent blowout. All things must be clamped or in a fixture. Here in 8th grade, we have this clamp set up, nice hold down on your 1/2-inch piece here. Okay, next machine we're going to move to is our bandsaw, which is back here. Bandsaw, 4-inch margin of safety on the bandsaw. We've actually had somebody this year that broke one of the rules of the bandsaw, one of which is don't put your hand or your finger in the line of cut. So you want to have your hands on either side of the blade, so that way you can, if it happens to push through, you don't have your finger in the way. All right, this requires a little bit of special cut here. What you're going to need to do is you're going to need to make a cut straight in, straight out, which is okay to back out on a cut in the bandsaw. That is not okay to back out of a curved cut. So watch as I make this. What we'll have to do is we'll have to cut down and out, and then make a crisscross pattern so that we can get ourselves in to cut this bottom line out. There's my straight in, straight out. There comes the crisscross now. That will give you your drop in for your phone. You'll be able to grab it and pull it out with your finger, okay? So, 4-inch margin of safety. Bandsaw, one other test question on the bandsaw has to do with which side. Guys, can you stop for a minute? The bandsaw, you never want to stand while it's running to the right side of the bandsaw. And the reason for that is if this blade were to ever break, this blade will come down, smash, hit the table, and it's gonna snake its way out the right-hand side. So if somebody happens to be sitting here at this table and somebody's using the bandsaw, not a good idea to be sitting here. You'll have to move when they operate the bandsaw. All right, questions on the bandsaw? All right, questions. So the machine I'm going to use here to show you is what's called our scroll saw. Now, when we cut out our part on the CNC router, which we'll talk about momentarily, but might not spend an entire 5 or 10 minutes working on that, I want to get you guys with the information you need for the test. You will use the scroll saw to take out parts of your center portion, and we're not going to have time today to cut that out on the CNC, so I'm just going to give a little demo here with the test block. Scroll saw for cutting irregular shapes and curves. Irregular shapes and curves can be inside curves, can be outside curves, but one rule on the scroll saw is that you cannot back out of a curved cut. So how we can prevent that from happening, somebody give me a pencil, I should have carried one around with me. So I'll do a long curved cut here. When doing a long curved cut, what you need to do are what are called relief cuts. And those are just straight in, straight out cuts on the scroll saw or bandsaw for that matter, to follow that contour and give you, as the name implies, relief. Relief on that. I kind of went in a little bit deep on that, but either way, that gives us an inside curve to work on, which will take us to our next machine here. Next machine machine is called our spindle sander. Our spindle sander. Guys, please be careful. Spindle sander is for inside curves. And if you look at the word spindle, right in the middle of that IN, inside curves. Couple things on this. Margin of safety for spindle sander, 4 inches. It rotates in a clockwise manner. You are going to feed your part against the rotation. You'll feel it. You don't want to go in the same direction it's spinning, because what will happen is it'll actually come, it'll want to fly out of your hands. So on this part, you're going to want to feel a little bit of resistance, and that's what you get. That's how you get the abrasive to do what it's supposed to do. Curves and against the rotation. So test questions are that. Okay, questions on spindle sander. All right, let's move over to our next sander here. Next sander that we're going to use is called the belt sander. Belt sander. Belt sander is for outside curves. Outside curves. Rules on the belt sander: 4-inch margin of safety. Keep your part on the table, not up here. Why wouldn't we hold it up here? Not go flying. It's gonna smash your fingers in between the table and the part. So outside curve. Outside curves, 4-inch margin of safety. Keep it on the table. Next sander, also for outside curves. Next sander for outside curves is called the
Also the belt sander.
disc sander. The disc sander. And you can see the side here. Maybe bring this over this way a little bit so we can see that. Disc sander. The main thing about the disc sander: 1, margin of safety 4 inches. It has to do with the rotation and when it enters back into the table. And you can see on this one here, it's entering back in the table on the downward side of the rotation. You can't say left or right, because multiple disc sanders that we have in these 2 labs go opposite ways. So it can't be left, can't be right, can't be clockwise, counterclockwise. It's where it enters back into the table. Back into the table, and that's called our downward side of the rotation. So, things on the disc sander, test questions. Outside curves, 4-inch margin of safety, downward side of the rotation. Okay, good on that? All right, what machine have we not covered yet? Router, directly behind us here.
12. Have all of the machines been 4 inches so far?
6 inches, or you mean for today?
Yeah.
New ones? Alright, next machine I've got here is called the router. The router puts a nice rounded edge or a shaped edge on an object. Now, one of the test questions you'll have has to do with a square board. We're going to use this square as the board we're talking about. You must do, when routing, you're going to do what's called the end grain first. The end grain is where you see kind of the rings of the tree. Okay, and I'll show you a reason why that happens. Probably be easier to just do it and is a blowout on the outside because I went across the grain first. Now, if I had done this backwards and done this with the grain first, I wouldn't have the opportunity that I'm about to have here by routing off that messed up. clean up that blowout at the end. Margin of safety on the router, 6-inch. Test question for the router has to do with rotation. Rotation of the router, UR2, just like the spindle sander, you're going to go against the rotation. Against the rotation. So on the quiz, I believe you're going to have to label the board. Label the board. You're going to show me the grain direction. Which one would you do first? Which one would you do first? Here, here, here.
Alright, can I see?
Side with the end grain. Alright, so test questions on the router. 6-inch margin of safety. Your end grain first. Go against the rotation. Alright, let me see what else I have here. Last machine there, we don't have time to test it before break. I don't want you to have to memorize all this over Thanksgiving break. Alright, this is called the spot welder. This is the reason why, or one of the reasons why we need open or no open-toed shoes. What the spot welder does, it puts 220 volts of electricity through a piece of metal, and it heats that metal up so much that it melts that metal together. Test question you're going to have on the spot welder. You are going to have not only just glasses, but our leather gloves here. So I think it's like a true or false. I can't remember what it is. Something along those lines though. Spot welder, there's a little trigger right here.
We see it.
Plugged in. There we go.
I got it.
All right, you may go. I'll do a quick review at the beginning of class on tomorrow. All right, guys. Go ahead. Sorry.